Hello, family. Welcome back to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. Just before we jump, JFK Today is a self-funded, self-produced show. We're on Patreon at Janaya FK. I am so grateful for all the support and for you just taking the time to listen. Okay, overview time. We're talking CEO Woes, LOL, drones, and some essential news on payouts, some quick hits. It was a good weekend to be black in America. I will tell you, listen, for all my fight fans out there, you already know what I'm talking about, UFC Tampa. For my non-fight family, indulge me a moment. I'll make it worth your time. Okay, Colby Covington, he's Cowboy Colby Covington. He sees himself as the ultra mega fighter, right? So he's constantly race baiting. He most recently took shots at LeBron. He thinks that all Muslims are terrorists. He had so much to say about BLM. He's an absolute loser and a nerd. He walked out to Hulk Hogan waving an American flag. We all know where Hulk Hogan stands these days and yesterday, right? I watched him get his ass beat by a big-ass black dude named Joaquin. You can't make it better than that. You can't tell me a better story than that. Phenomenal. It was so satisfying to watch. I'm going to tell you something. I just know Louis Farrakhan was thrilled Saturday night. Dr. Umar Johnson put his hands together and said, donations, donations. The black listeners right now are dying. God bless Dr. Umar Johnson. He is absolutely batshit crazy, but good for a joke here and there. Now, listen here. I got something. I got to just get something off my chest, right? Because this is very random, but whatever. It's like 1 a.m., right? Whatever. There is a white baby doll in my house, and I'm extremely uncomfortable right now. Like, listen. I filmed some skits with comedian friends over the weekend. Don't worry, you're going to find out all about it soon, right? But for one of these sketches, we needed a baby. But we didn't end up needing the baby for that day. And now there's just this white baby doll in my house. And I don't like it. Like, I need it out, right? Like, I just keep thinking, like, what if someone breaks into my house and just sees like my edge controller and my ball shorts and other black paraphernalia, and then there's just this white baby in my house. And so I tried to put it outside, but it was the daytime, and like people noticed that I just had this white baby because they did a good job packaging it, like it had the blanket on or whatever. And I tried to like leave it outside, but I was wearing like a bonnet and a robe, and I just looked like a negligent foster mom. Do you know what I mean? Like, people were staring a little bit, and I was like, all right. So I just panicked, and I grabbed the baby by the leg, and I just ran back into the house. And now it's just here, and I can just feel its energy just staring at me. Somebody come get this white baby out of my house. That's all I got to say. Like, I can't live in peace. I can't live in peace. Okay, back to the news. Back to the things that matter. Get this white baby out of my house. Disney had to fork up big bucks. Why? Because of wage theft. Now listen, wage theft, especially for minimum wage workers, is one of the most, rampant, most normalized exploitative practice in this country that is not talked about enough. So let me tell you about this class action lawsuit, okay? So there was a class action lawsuit against Disney that was brought on by Disneyland workers 5 years earlier, right? Guess what? They won. Yay. This is huge. 50,000 current and former Disneyland workers will receive back pay and compensation totaling $233 million. Disney quietly agreed to a settlement, right? And that's the thing. It's a little too quiet. And this is one of my beefs with legacy media. We don't get these stories enough. Not just the wins, but the actual normalization of wage theft and especially minimum wage theft, right? So Randy Rennick, this is one of the attorneys representing the workers in this class action suit, said that he believed that this is the largest wage and hour class settlement in California history, and it will change the lives for Disney families and their communities, right? So the employees allege that Disney ignored Anaheim's minimum wage law, and they fought for back pay with interest. That's what I'm talking about. This agreement is taking place just as Anaheim is set to increase minimum wages to nearly $20.50 an hour in the new year. I remember a time, 10, 15 years ago when that was the minimum wage that we were fighting for. Now, even that minimum wage does not keep up with the living costs, RE inflation. But it's just beautiful because the settlement covers more than 50,000, as I mentioned, like current and former Disney employees. Just imagine like the stress over the last 5 years of having to deal with this. And here's the thing. And why do I say that this is such a big deal, even though it's never discussed? Was it just because I spent the entire weekend researching it? I mean, I'd be reading. KR let me have their version of reading. I'm reading Nickel and Dimed right now. But get this, right? U.S. employers steal an estimated $50 billion every year from their employees. For comparison, robbery is about $500 million. Burglary, $3 billion, and vehicle theft, maybe like $6 billion or something like that, right? $50 billion every year are stolen from their employees. That's wild. So the Economic Policy Institute is a great resource for this because, get this, like there's a report. It's pretty extensive, but this was it was $50 billion back in 2017, right? And the report focuses explicitly on minimum wage violations. And that to me is particularly egregious, right? Because minimum wage violations by definition affect the lowest wage workers, right? That means it's impacting those who can least afford to lose earnings, the people who can least afford to lose money. So this form of wage theft is going to cause families to fall below the poverty line. It's going to create need for and reliance on more public assistance. It costs taxpayers, like we're covering the trifecta of like annoying people, right? Even the liberal talking points don't cover the spread on this. It's like lost wages damage state and local economies. I mean, when you hear Trump and all these other losers talk about the need to just create jobs and so people can spend money and that's economy and da-da-da-da-da, somehow this doesn't factor in. And how different would it be if our legacy news media, or any media for that matter, properly covered this or covered this at large? It puts so much downward pressure on wages, right? It affects every industry. So what's to be done? This report has a pretty good argument for strengthening states' legal protections against wage theft, increasing penalties for violators, bolstering enforcement capacities, and protecting workers from retaliation when violations are reported. And I'm like, all of that is super dope. Like, we need all of those things. But I'm also like, make the minimum wage so fucking good. And I know I'm talking in idealisms, but I feel that very strongly. I'm like, the way to circumvent all of this is to actually when you think about all these white dudes mad at foreigners, I'm like, really, you ought to be mad at forensics because he was really just out here. The Zodiac killer was just doing whatever he wanted. Everybody was just having a good time, right? You could just buy a house for like 12 raspberries, right? I'm like, you could have had your secret family and sent your bastard child to fucking college with the rest of your legitimate children on a U.S. postal worker salary back in the day. Go back to that. Shit. Mad at the wrong people. All right. I have learned in this moment, because I went from a white baby doll to this, that maybe I need to record earlier. It's just that my hours are all out of whack because I might be just a little bit overworked, but honestly, I'm having a blast with it if we're just being like, there's so much information out there. I cannot get enough of it. Get this, right? This is another great thing. Weird segue, but here we go, that I came across this weekend. So Judith Butler has this great interview on El País. It's like, but this one is in English. So it's english.elpais.com. And I really liked their response to this. Judith Butler goes by they and her. It doesn't really matter. She's gangster that way. They're gangster that way. Anyway, so the question was this, right? So this part of the interview, Judith was being asked about the election, right? And why the Democrats lost. So the question was, does the election result mean that woke is broke? This is how Judith answered. I don't even know what the woke is. It's just a slur that the right wing uses. So the person goes, I'll rephrase the question. Does Trump's victory mark some kind of end to identity politics, right? Answer. Identity is, for me, a point of departure for alliances, which needs to include all kinds of people from trans to working people to those taxi drivers that J.K. Rowling is worried about. Identity is a great start for making connections and becoming part of a larger community. But you can't have a politics of identity that is only about identity. If you do that, you draw sectarian lines and you abandon our interdependent ties. That was just me saying, remember that stuff where I say identity can and should be our entry point into things, but not our exit point? Look here, Judith agreeing. But the part that really stood out to me was the top of that, of this little snippet that I pulled, right? Let's go back to it. Does the election result mean that woke is broke? Or, first of all, terrible phrasing, but whatever. Answer, I don't even know what the woke is. It's just a slur that the right wing uses. That right there, I don't even know what the woke is. That, from here on in, needs to be our official stance with this ridiculous... I can't even, properly gather the extent to which Elon Musk is trying to make words like the woke mind virus happen. I hear Joe Rogan saying the same things. Everything that doesn't make sense, any contradiction that they're confronted with, they just say it's the woke mind virus. And I'm like, didn't we stop saying that word 3 years ago? Fucking losers. But it's coming up, and it's something that we are going to be confronted with again and again and again. And the correct response is, I don't even know what that is anymore. What is that even? And I really, really believe in that casual dismissal, almost a little bit of disdain. It's the ideal and perfect response, because to push against it is to imply its significance. But this is the thing. It is so loosely defined on their side because it means whatever they need it to mean, so that we are always on the defensive. Rather, ask them to define it, right? I remember earlier on, when it didn't catch the way that they wanted to across the right, they kind of found themselves backed into a corner, right? Because they kept trying to be like the woke, and we were asking, what does that mean? And then they literally explain equality. And they just seemed absolutely nuts. So this is something that's going to come up. And the way to respond to it is to be casually disdainful or dismissive, because it's let people reveal themselves about it. So I just found that thing a little bit profound. Anyway, whatever. Let's get into this CEO stuff. What's happening with them? They're apparently very scared right now. So sorry. I'm like, okay. So Politico reported that New York Governor Kathy Hochul held a therapy session with 175 corporate reps and CEO to, quote, calm the nerves of the NYC business elite in the wake of United Health CEO Brian Thompson's assassination, or, getting got, right? So the corporate world is worried. So the New York governor hosted a virtual meeting to discuss security resources, right? And I'm just like, what the fuck is this, right? What is it? Who do you think you are, you CEOs? Who do you think you are, babe? Pig in the city? You guys just get whatever you want? A little bit shook for something that has nothing to do with you, or maybe it does. And if that's the case, get a different career, weirdo. Okay. Do you like the extent to which state resources are being allocated for these folks? Look at this, right? State Director of Operations, Catherine Garcia, who's managing this effort, right? And Kathy Wild, this is the CEO and president of the Partnership for New York City. They've been the business world's point. So this person's been, Kathy Wild in particular, has been the business world's point person, right? So Hochul was on MSNBC's Morning Joe to discuss how state officials plan to provide law enforcement intelligence in case a specific sector is being targeted. She said she intends to combat, quote, domestic terrorism. I want you to think about a couple of things for a minute, right? One, I want to remind us that what is considered violence in the Western imagination, we talked about this last week, right? It is always interpersonal. There is a refusal to understand or address systemic violence, which is why the actions of that bisexual hung Italian stallion, Prince Luigi Mangione, allegedly took CEO Brian Thompson's life, right? And so the public understood this. The private sector condemned it. So that's number one. Two, do you see how quickly state resources can be activated to care for the wealthy? Remember how you have to, first of all, no one's mental health care is covered here. And even if you try, you are jumping through so many fucking hoops. ProPublica has a great breakdown of the extent to which it is designed to make it so that therapists it is so exhaustive and bureaucratic and intricate and contradictory that we know how we access it from the outside, but not even therapists who want to provide covered care can do so with any level of consistency. It's pretty wild. They have this great breakdown of it on their website. So that's ProPublica, right? But you see how quickly it's there? Mental health services, security services, they are being catered to. And that is what it means to be rich in America. You get safety. Those resources are always there for you. But if you're just if you're a regular living your regular ass life, oh yeah, cops can shoot you if you're having a mental health crisis, right? If you're autistic and black, they can strangle you out on the streets. You could die and be in debt for dying. Like, this is a demonic system. Getting sick in this country is such a death sentence for so many reasons. Like, I struggle to wrap my head around just how disgusting it is. But this shift, this is such a moment, right? Like, so peep this over the weekend. The New York Times, they put out a United Healthcare CEO op-ed, right? So these losers from United Health decided they're going to write a little thing to talk to the people. And they got fucking fleeced in the comments, right? So the essay is titled United Health Group CEO, the healthcare system is flawed. Let's fix it. I'll save you the time. The largest insurer in America had nothing of substance to say. There was not a single change or improvement that they recommended, right? Not on access, not on coverage, not on outcomes, right? So the comment section, the NYT comment section went the fuck off in the best possible way. They called out the bullshit profit motive, the fact that this whole spread said nothing, and that corporate media ran just these like empty, useless corporate talking points. So what did the New York Times do in response to that? After 1,987 comments or so, they disabled the comment section. You raggedy bitch. Disable the comment section, right? This is a reminder. Unlike the rest of the, quote, developed world, the U.S. healthcare system is provided entirely by private companies, and there is no universal single-payer system for non-seniors. Most people here, you either have to pay individually into an insurance plan or get insurance through an employer. these plans, as we know, cost hundreds of dollars. That really, often thousands of dollars a month, depending on the extent of a person's needs, whether you had any pre-existing conditions, and the plans being offered by insurers. It's disgusting, it's rapacious, and it needs to end. And with these rollbacks that are inevitable, there are going to be openings. Our job is to make sure that we take care of each other enough in the interim to see it through. Why did I say that they were pig in the city? What's wrong with me? Oh my God. Anyway, we need to get into the drones. What's all this about the drones? All I do is say Mangione. That's a Mangione. Okay. What's all this about the drones? So I have been on a chase for us with this shit with the drones, because let me tell you, there has been conflicting stories about unidentified drones flying over parts of Jersey and the U.S. And the conspiracies abound. They have peaked online over the weekend, especially on TikTok and in the manosphere. And so I've been like, all right, we're doing this. We're figuring it out. What's going on? What are the assumptions? What are the conspiracies? What are the experts saying? What are the pseudoscientists saying? I want it all. I wanted it all. Right? Okay. So, because you know that I need to get to the bottom of this thing. So what the fuck is going on? Here's the thing. It's true. It's true. For the better part of a month, dozens of drone sightings have been reported over New Jersey, going back to the 18th of November. And if you go even further back, a legitimate source, a news source, I can't remember if it was Washington Post or BBC, right? So that's some have been reported from as early as October, but let's just say it's from November, because this one seems to be the most common thread, right? So since November 18th, this is New York. So it's just not Jersey. It's New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, Virginia. And this all comes from the BBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. This is actually happening. And get this, right? Even after extensive investigations by the feds, right? So the FBI, Homeland Security, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, I didn't even know what that was. Now I know all about them. But the origins, all together, these folks are saying the origins and operators of the drones still remain unidentified, right? And some of these flights were even sited near sensitive military research facilities. Okay, there was one that's kind of funny though, right? So one of these sensitive military research facilities is called Picatinny Arsenal, and I read it as Pickaninny. I got so mad. It's a racially charged. Okay. But no, it's Picatinny, which I'm sorry. It's too close. It's too close for comfort. Anyway, so they've been flying around. One of them was even near Donald Trump's golf course or whatever. I don't care. So the Federal Aviation Administration, right? So they're the ones that kind of control what is allowable in the airspace, right? So if there are rules about flying, helicopters or drones or this or that, it has to align with their whole little policy thing, right? So they've since issued temporary flight restrictions prohibiting drone flights over Bedminster and Picatinny. Anyway, Hochul, I'm so tired of this bitch, but New York Governor Hochul declared last week that, quote, this has gone too far. She asked federal authorities to authorize local police departments to shoot down drones. And even Trump is he wants the feds to shoot them out of the sky. He's let the public know and now. Otherwise, shoot them down. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy wrote to Joe Biden, Toothy Joe, and demanded answers, right? Even New Jersey's new Senator Andy Kim spent Thursday night on a drone hunt in rural North, in rural northern New Jersey, and he posted about it on X. And the thing that's so annoying, right? because it's like, why am I even still on this site? It's awful, whatever. This is where the vast majority of news media, journalists, and, government still exists. They are primarily communicating directly on X. But what you're noticing is that Democrats and Republicans are like, what the F is going on? To further illustrate the point, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader for the Dems, was just like, what the F? He's asking DHS to deploy special detection systems that use like 360-degree technology to detect drones. So like this is his little quote here. If the technology exists for a drone to make it up into the sky, there certainly is the technology that can track the craft with precision and determine what the heck is going on. That was Schumer on Thursday. Here's the problem. On Sunday, sorry. But here's the problem. Here's the fucking problem. So like this is happening. All these lawmakers are like, what is going on? The federal authorities are saying, we don't know. Here's the fucking problem. Outside of not knowing who or what is operating these drones, most Americans can't tell the difference between drone lights, planes, and stars. So some people are literally shooting at planes in the sky. Planes with people in them. So former governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, he wrote this long ass thread on X. Yes, I did read it. Saying he, quote, personally witnessed and videoed what appeared to be dozens of large drones in the sky above his residence. So y'all know I had to like really look. So I got into the video. And of course now everybody realized what I realized in that moment, right? The drones that he was so scared of, that he personally witnessed, it was Orion's belt. You simple bitch. It was a star constellation. He was also looking at Sirius and Procyon. Those single stars that just be hanging out? I hate it here. I do want to say, this is not something to be stressed out about right now, right? Like, brace yourself. There's going to be a slew of conspiracies coming out, but officials from several U.S. security agencies, and there's going to be a caveat here, right? But they have stressed that the drones in no way appear to be a threat to public safety, right? Like, many state and municipal lawmakers are calling for stricter rules about who can fly unmanned aircrafts. And the Pentagon is saying that these mystery drones are not military and likely not foreign. We'll have to cycle through a bunch more, maybe like a few more cycles of conspiracies before we find out what is actually what is actually going on. In the meantime, all of these people from Trump to Hochul are just like, Congress must pass a law that will give us power to deal directly with the drones. I'm like, if you can't figure out who's operating them, how are you going to enforce these laws, lady? Trump is saying that the government knows more than it's letting on. And he posted this on Truth Social. And I got to tell you, it's so upsetting when we agree, right? And I want to be clear. I don't think it's nefarious in any way. Nefarious? Someone tell me how to pronounce that word, because I think I've said it twice now and I don't know. It's not as bad as Candace Owens pronouncing napalm while positioning herself as a subject issue area expert, pronouncing napalm. It's not as bad, but I got to figure that one out. So help me out, people. Anyway, I don't think it's like evil necessarily, but none of y'all know. I mean, I know that there's just regular schmoes in there, but like somebody knows something. Anyway, 2 people have already been arrested after allegedly conducting, quote, hazardous drone operation. These poor boys probably just like trains and planes and shit. So they were operating some drones near Boston's main airport. 2 guys, Robert Duffy and Jeremy Folsick, were arrested on Long Island, which is part of the Boston Harbor Islands, for trespassing, right? And I'm just like, They were dangerously close to Logan International Airport. I'm like, leave them alone. Just having a good night. Just having a good night. But this is one of those rare moments where it feels very bipartisan. I guess it's regardless of politics. Niggas is like, what's going on? What's going on? Anyway. We're just at about time. I did write a note in here, and I totally forgot to mention my score on the RADS test was 161. So basically, if it was 160 and below, it was the one, and then if it was 161 to like 2 something, then I was the highest one. So I am not the highest in the literal sense, but in the categorical sense, based on their research, I am in that category on the spectrum. But like you already know how I feel about this. But anyway, there was another point that I just want to just squeeze in here before we hit the VMs for that voice note of the day. On moving forward, right? So as we mentioned last week, Nikki Giovanni passed away. And there was an interview that never happened. And the person who was supposed to do the interview with Nikki Giovanni is named Janisha Watts. And so she sort of just wrote a little bit on her last interactions with Nikki Giovanni. Basically, she hit up Nikki and they were going to be talking about Black Lives Matter and sort of juxtaposing that with her relationship to James Baldwin and the time before, right? Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, that kind of stuff. And everybody who knew James Baldwin personally and intimately called him Jimmy. So what she said was, I think Jimmy's voice is extremely important. This is Nikki Giovanni. I think Jimmy's voice is extremely important, and I keep seeing other writers whistling the same tune. She wrote, the writing about race in America would probably be very different without Jimmy. But she didn't want to go back to Baldwin during an upheaval that seemed to demand a different response, one that didn't need to be editorialized, right? So Nikki Giovanni first agreed to do this interview and then declined and was sort of explaining her reasoning why. She said, Jimmy and his generation wanted to explain to white Americans what we were doing wrong. She continued, but Black Lives Matter simply wants to go forward. The writer goes on to say, this is Janisha Watts, right? On the surface, her letter could be read as a repudiation of thinkers who belong to a different generation, perhaps in favor of her own. But Giovanni, already in her late 70s, was making a broader point. She noted that Black Lives Matter did not have an office, a phone number, or a leader, and she called that a smart decision. At the time, I didn't recognize what she was trying to tell me. I, too, should move on, right? That was the message. I, too, should move on. She wanted to help me see that the civil rights movement doesn't belong to any one artist or generation. In her own subtle way, she was reminding her editor not to get hung up on big names and bylines, but to focus instead on the stories that move us forward. Now, this is Nikki now. Now, when a black man is killed, she wrote, it's not Malcolm or Martin, but George Floyd, who they thought no one would know or care about. I'm a big fan of the blues, not because they are sad, they're not, but because they give us a rhythm to keep moving. Why I say, right now I'm talking me to you, your best years are ahead of you. And a few of you reached out. These are not just words, right? I believe it. I believe it. I know it to be true. Your best years are ahead of you. Because the second you decide it's true, it's true. It's a choice we get to make. And here's the best part, right? This isn't one of those annoying, make every second count type of situations. I watch way too much anime and Simpsons while reading and playing chess on my phone to say that that's the case, right? No. And it's like where every moment is like supposed to be in pursuit of something. No, that's capitalist bullshit. This is one of those moments, right? Where every second you put into thinking, dreaming, working, processing, or doing nothing, whatever it is, right? Because we're always working on something in the back of our head. It's a deposit that you make. And you can go back to that deposit no matter how many days or months go by, right? However many times you thought, well, I thought I could start this thing, but then I didn't, or, it's just not there yet. The time you put in will always be there. Your best years are ahead of you. It is not measured in minutes missed, right? An hour's lost. There is no such thing as lost time. You are exactly where you need to be in this moment, in this moment only. And the second that you decide that the chapter's done or the page needs to turn, that is true. That is the truth. Your best years are ahead of you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It is a choice we make. And fuck if it's not awesome, right? If it's not going to be an awesome one. It is. Because you are. All right. It is time. Like we're it's like it's now 2. I've lost my fucking mind. Okay, let me just hit the VMs for that question of the day.
Hi, Janaya. I recently saw the film I Saw the TV Glow, and it talks a lot about the queer and trans experience. Are there any shows or movies that you've seen that are similar to this, and do you think the world would benefit from more queer media like this?
What a great question. Thank you. You know, it's weird. I haven't watched that film yet, right? I saw the TV Glow. But I've read so many reviews, criticisms. People were thrilled by it. And so I have it's weird because I even read like a play-by-play with the scenes. But I haven't watched it yet. I did read Jane Showburns, this is the trans creator of the film, right? Said that, being trans is about hiding this thing inside you for half your life. And then the dual horror and catharsis of finally letting those walls down and seeing it for the first time and being left with this sort of double-edged sword of 2 bad options. To put your authentic self, you've been hiding from back inside, and just pretend like you never saw it and go on living half a life, or face the unknown, which will almost certainly mean complete social death, essentially the end of reality as you know it. Now, that's a little more bleak, particularly the latter part, than I'm inclined, but absolutely. And it's just absolutely, we need more queer media like this because it is part of the human condition. It's part of the human experience, right? It is universal. So many of us are out here living half lives. And honestly, when we get right down to it, right, all this shit that I've been reading, deplorable politics, the righteous mind, right, the dawn of everything, so much of it, particularly the righteous mind, the invention of a victim to explain harm, right? To justify our feelings of discomfort. So basically, I'm uncomfortable with trans people because they're harming children. That's a made up thing. Really, it's what people use to describe their discomfort, and it really affirms something that I believe, right? In all of my interactions with people, that one of the core reasons why trans people make other people uncomfortable, right, is because we chose. And for the vast majority of people in the world who feel like they had no choice, that they bit the bullet, that they sucked it up and they fucking lived their life by the script, just like we're supposed to. It's something there. It is disquieting to see somebody make that choice. It is upsetting. And what I want and what I think queer media does is that it changes that threat into an invitation. Now, that's not the job of this particular movie, but I think that that's what queer media, that's the power of it. I love Steven Universe for that. And I know that might not be it's a weird comparison because, with A24, you're going to get the little darkness, but it is so profound to choose. And it's the thing that this world, this life, it takes away from us every day. Every day we're expected to shrink and contort and fit into these impossible ways. And every day, so much of us just want to feel seen, just want to feel acknowledged in some kind of way. The things that we carry, the things that we know, to be seen with a kind of care and fullness. And very rarely, it doesn't happen enough, I want to say. And in those moments where we experience that for ourselves, man, it's worth it. It's worth the hardship and the suffering, because it's dignified, even if it's hard. So here's to the struggle, y'all. Here's to the struggle and our struggle. These are going to be some of the hardest, fucking most awesome years of our life. We are not going to suffer under a fucking dictator and a tyrant. Oh no. We will be the fucking thorn. Anyway, I'm sending love out to all y'all. I'm too fucking yappy. I apologize. It's time to hit the outro music because I've lost the fucking plot. Here we go. Just want to say thank you so much for listening to JFK Today. It means the world to me. This show really is a labor of love. New episodes drop 4 times a week. We're available everywhere podcasts are. Reminder, JFK Today is a self-funded show. If you love it, if you feel it, go ahead and support it. We're on patreon.com/JanayaFK. Don't forget, I want to hear from you. Drop your questions in voice note form to jfktodayShow@gmail.com. Shout out to KR and Carolyn, and shout out to you, the listeners that make it all possible. Love you. Peace.